All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us today. Like I said, my name is Kristen Fitzpatrick, Senior Consultant here at Evergreen Solutions. And we are actually located not too awfully far from you guys. We are up here in Tallahassee, and we are excited to be working with the district on this compensation and classification study. Just to give you a little bit of background about our company, we are a national public sector consulting firm. We've worked in the majority of all the states in the United States. We've done quite a few of these compensation and classification studies. My team specifically here at Evergreen, we are the K-12 team, so we specialize in K-12 school districts. My experience, I actually worked with Leon County Schools for quite a while before going over to the Florida Department of Education and working in recruitment and retention there. But we love what we do with our school districts, and we hope that we're really able to help bring some recommendations that will help all of you. So going back to a little bit more about Evergreen, once again, like I said, my team is public school districts. However, we also work with local governments, higher education institutions, state agencies, and quasi-governmental organizations. So the goals of this study, this is a compensation and classification study. The goals of this study is for us to review the current compensation and classification system to look at the internal equity of the various positions. And then we'll also be conducting an outside a salary survey of your peer organizations to ensure external equity. Now, at the end of this, we are going to be providing some recommendations to the district for a revised compensation and classification system, making sure that it is equitable both internally and externally. Now, I do want to set some expectations because a lot of the times some folks tend to get a little bit confused about what all a compensation and classification study really entails. So here are some things you can expect. We will be analyzing each classification, their roles, responsibilities, as well as how they are compensated. And that is, once again, that is within the entire organization as it compares to other positions, as well as what other districts are paying for similar positions. So you can also expect, obviously, some recommendations for a revised system. Now, one thing that we absolutely cannot guarantee, so please don't expect this, is a guaranteed salary increase. This is, once again, this is we're looking at the market, we're looking at that internal and external equity. But what we can guarantee is that we will not recommend a decrease to anyone's salary. We also will not be recommending any staffing level changes. So this is not a staffing study. This is strictly compensation and classification. So to reiterate, we are looking at your roles and responsibilities and how it is compares to other positions within the organization. And we are looking at the salary ranges that are currently in place for those positions. So strictly compensation and classifications. So there are a few different phases of our study. You can see on the screen here, this is our process. So we start out with the assessment of current conditions. This is where we're just looking at the data that was sent over to us, the different pay plans that are in place, what employees are currently making. We're looking at how they have progressed through these ranges, any compression issues that we may see, things like that. So we're just strictly looking at data from this point at the assessment of current conditions stage. Then we're moving into the employee outreach portion, and that is where we are right now. So the employee outreach, you can see there's an asterisk beside that as well, the job assessment tool and management issues tool. This is where the employee's participation is key in our study. So the employee orientation consists of an outreach survey that you will be receiving next week, and we'll go into more detail about that in a moment. But it allows us to gather feedback from the employees on their perceptions, concerns, things like that regarding compensation and classification. The next stage of our study would be that job assessment tool and management issues tool. And we're going to go into quite a bit of detail about that, because that is just like with the survey, the outreach survey, that is going to be something that we do ask everyone to complete. Then we also will have a market survey. So this is where we are selecting benchmarked positions. So not all positions are included, but that does not mean all positions are not part of the study. You guys have a lot of different classifications, but we're only going to select a few of those we call them benchmarks, to go out and ask other districts, okay, what are you paying for a position like this? Now, keep in mind, not all districts have the same positions. Some districts have very unique positions, so we wouldn't find them in another district. So that market survey will allow us to tell how much above or below overall the district is, compared to those peer organizations. And like I said, those are going to be districts within the state the district is directly competing with for employees, and then to, other similar districts in terms of demographics, size, location, things like that. And then, of course, our final part of this study would be those plan revisions, where we give those recommendations for a revised compensation and classification system. So let's talk a little bit about employee participation. And I want to throw something out real quick. This project will focus on employee positions within the MESP collective bargaining unit, the IUPAT, and then the local 1010 collective bargaining unit, and unrepresented employee positions. So it does not include every single position within the district, only those that fall under those bargaining units and the unrepresented ones. So employee participation, there are three areas. Most of you will fall under number 1 and 2. So everyone that is part of this study, once again, Marion Education Support Professionals, International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, and the local 1010 unit, and unrepresented employees will all receive this online outreach survey beginning Monday, so February 6th. Okay, this will be sent via email from SurveyMonkey, and it will come from Evergreen. So it will actually come from my email address. And it is one of 2 emails you will receive. Okay, so there are 2 separate things. You have the online outreach survey, and then you also have this job assessment tool. So on Monday, you should get 2 emails from us. Okay, the job assessment tool will be sent via email, and that should come from the jat2@consultevergreen.com email. And once again, it will also be sent on Monday. Now, the supervisor review, this is going to be supervisors only, and that will also come from us, but that will not come, if you are a supervisor, you will not get that until, I would say, 2.5-ish weeks. Okay, so don't expect a supervisor review email just yet. So let's talk a little bit more about the outreach survey versus the JAT. So the outreach survey will be open from February 6th to the 13th. Okay. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. It's a very short survey. It will come from Evergreen via SurveyMonkey. It asks questions regarding the current compensation and classification system. So your concerns, your perceptions, just getting some general feedback about the systems currently in place. This is not asking questions about your individual position, and it's just your feedback about the systems currently in place. This survey is anonymous, so names and positions are not captured in the survey questions, and we would only know that it is your responses if you add your name to any of those answers. Okay. The job assessment tool is a little bit more of a lift. Okay. This is going to take you about 30 to 45 minutes to complete. And once again, that email will come directly from us. It collects information related to the employee's roles and responsibilities within the organization. So we are asking questions about what your position does. Okay, whereas the outreach survey is just your general feedback about how things are going regarding compensation and classifications. The JAT is getting very specific about what you do on a day-to-day basis. This one is not anonymous, okay? And there is a specific reason for that. In order for me to analyze your individual position, to be able to see if maybe you are compensated or classified appropriately, I have to know who you are. I have to know whenever I go to make my recommendations, Jane Smith in facilities needs to be classified as this instead of this. Okay, so that is why it is not anonymous. So let's talk just a little bit more about that outreach survey. Once again, this is the opportunity for employees to submit that anonymous feedback regarding the organization's compensation and classification system. So these questions are going to address the pros and cons of both the compensation, the pay plan, and the job titles, okay? And it's also going to ask about changes that you would like to see moving forward. Once again, this survey is in addition to the job assessment tool. It is sent via SurveyMonkey by me, but please do not forward this email. Otherwise, if you forward your email and whoever you forward it to clicks on that link, they're going to be able to overwrite your answers. Okay, so that's why we ask not to forward it, because we want to make sure your answers are captured. If you know of someone that didn't get the email, feel free to reach out to either myself or to HR, and we can make sure that they get a copy of the survey to complete as well. This outreach survey can be done on any device with internet access. So you can do it on your phone, your tablet, your computer, whatever. And these results come directly to Evergreen. Now, we will give the district a report that includes findings. However, we don't identify any employee, obviously, or classification. It's all written in themes. We really just want to be able to collect that quantitative data and provide the district with, for example, X percentage of employees felt this way about the current compensation system. We like to be able to give those hard numbers. Now, the job assessment tool, it is used by Evergreen for a variety of things. Okay, first, it helps us determine how the work is organized. So who is doing what? Once again, it also allows us to analyze each individual employee's position. Remember, in order for me to analyze your position, you have to submit a job assessment, okay? Excuse me. If you don't submit a job assessment tool, I have to assume that your position, your compensation, classification, everything is perfect, okay? So that is why it is so important for everyone to submit one, because we want to make sure that you are classified as well as compensated appropriately for that position. So going in number 3, determining whether the organization is paying competitively and fairly. So this goes back into us making sure that that position, where it sits in that internal hierarchy of classifications, that it is in the appropriate spot. It also helps us make those recommendations for appropriate pay levels and ranges, and design a new system that is fair and equitable for all employees. We want to make sure that we are capturing all of the information as much as possible. In order for us to make those recommendations, we have to have documentation. And the job assessment tool is one way that we are able to gather that documentation. So once again, extremely important for everyone to complete this job assessment tool. So when you are completing it, I recommend using a computer or iPad/tablet. Do not use your phone. There's a lot of different pieces to the job assessment tool, and sometimes with the phone, it's a little bit tricky to use. So I would recommend sticking to a computer or a tablet. Now, you will be assigned a unique ID, and it will be emailed to you in that invitation letter on Monday. So you'll get that. Do not share your unique ID. We don't want anyone to be able to log in as you and, overwrite your answers. This can be completed over multiple days or sessions. You do not have to do it in one sitting. If you want to, do a section a day, that's totally fine. And then the JAT access will be open to employees for approximately 2 weeks. Then we will close out where employees can go in and access, and then just release it to those supervisors. Now, if you're a supervisor, you still need to complete your employee JAT. And we're going to talk more about what the supervisor review really entails in just a few moments. But just keep that in mind. If you are a supervisor, you still have to complete your employee portion. And as you can see in the middle of the screen, this is going to be available 24/7 during the survey period. So if you want to do your job assessment at 2 a.m., feel free. We appreciate any time that you do it. So there are going to be 5 sections to this job assessment. And if you were to look at your current job description, you would probably say, these sections are pretty much all on my job description. Well, yeah. So this first one is going to be basic information. This is where you're just giving us a brief description, the type of work that's performed, education, work experience needed, things like that. The next is going to be those essential job functions. So this is going to be those functions that cannot be assigned to another classification. They are the reason that your classification exists. And these are the functions that would cause harm to the organization if nobody was performing them or if they were not being performed correctly. The third section is job factors. So this is asking you about your position's level of leadership, working conditions, complexity, decision-making, authority, and relationship to other positions in the organization. The fourth section is the equipment and machinery. So it's basically a check all that applies, any equipment and machinery that you were using for your position. Everything from a telephone to a piece of heavy equipment. And then 5 is the physical ability. So this is the list of any physical abilities needed to perform the job. So if you're currently constantly on your feet all day, standing would be one of those physical abilities. So from here, we're going to go into kind of walking you through this job assessment tool and what it looks like and what you can expect. And I put some tips on here for you, and these are going to be extremely important, ones that we often get questions about quite a bit. So just making sure that you are, if you need to come back to it, like I said, this is recorded. You can come back and watch this video. So the first thing you're going to see when you click on the link in the email that we send you is going to be this screen. You're going to enter that unique ID that's emailed to you, and your last name will auto-populate. Okay? All you got to do is then click continue. So the next screen is going to be the login, the menu. You'll see there's going to be 2 options, employee JAT and supervisor review. If we are in the employee window, do not click on supervisor review. It will throw an error message. You will not be able to go any further. So go to employee JAT. Even if you are a supervisor, once again, as a supervisor, you still have to complete your employee portion, because then your supervisor will have to review your submission. Okay. Then we have our basic sections, like we talked about earlier, the basic information, the functions, the job factors, equipment and machinery, and physical abilities. Like I said, you'll notice this looks very similar to a job description. That's because that is, we're trying to get that full understanding of what this job entails. This is not a performance review at all. We are wanting just to make sure that we have the correct information when it comes to what your position does, the reason for your position existing, okay? So your basic job related information, whenever you click on basic information, this is your, the screen you'll see. Your last name and first name and job title will appear on the screen. Once again, this is not anonymous, and it's not meant to be, because I have to know who you are in order to make sure that you are classified correctly. If you don't complete this JAT, I can't analyze your individual position. This next section is just the job introduction. Give me 1 to 2 sentences about what, if you had to describe your position, the purpose of it, what would you say there? I don't need a whole book, just 1 or 2 sentences. And then it's going to ask about any supervisory responsibility. So if you supervise anyone directly or indirectly, you would put that number there. Okay, and this is just a continuation of that screen. So the type of work performed, is it clerical, manual, labor, trades-based, technical, paraprofessional, administrator, managerial professional, or executive advanced professional, okay? This next section, education and experience, gives folks sometimes a little bit of, they get a little confused on it. You'll notice here the directions say, please select the level that best describes how much education and experience a new hire should be required to have for your position. So this is not asking how much education and experience, or even what certifications. You'll notice below it asks licenses and certifications. So it's not asking what you currently have, but rather what should be required of someone coming into the position. Okay, so that was the end of the first section. So now we're into section 2, which is the essential functions. So this is going to give you actually room for about 15 tasks. Once again, this is not asking you every single little thing that you do. I don't need to know that you went to the post office once a month ago because somebody was out. That's not an essential job function. The essential job function are the functions of your job that could not be assigned to another classification. These are the functions, these tasks are the reason that your position exists for the organization. So what is it that you were hired to do? Okay. Now, yes, do classifications, do positions change over time? Absolutely. So if you have been assigned a task that, especially post-COVID, things have changed drastically. So if you have been assigned something to do that you weren't initially assigned, that wasn't initially part of your job because nobody was doing that at all, that would of course be an essential task. So once again, these are just those functions that nobody else could do, no other classification. I'm not saying no other person, but no other classification could do. This is why your position exists in the organization. The next section is going into the job factors. So these job factors, there's going to be a list of, usually there's about 8 on each one. Is it a perfect list? Absolutely not, but you are to select the one that is the closest match. Okay, so you're only selecting one. So the first one is leadership. So this is asking you about the level of leadership that your position has in the organization. So not in your section, your division, your department, but within the entire organization. I can, just to give you a little bit of an idea here, your superintendent is going to be the one that determines strategy as well as long-range goals for the organization. Okay, so unless you're the superintendent, you are probably not going to be this very last one. But once again, take some time, read through these whenever you are logging in, and really think about which one would be most appropriate. Now, like I said, they're not all going to be a perfect match, but which one is the closest match? At the bottom, you can't see it here on the screen, but there will be a comment box below each one of these for you to provide some additional feedback. If you want to tell us why you chose that one as opposed to another one, totally fine. If you want to tell us that, hey, part of this statement applies, but the other doesn't, that's wonderful information to have as well. Job factors, the next job factor is working conditions. So once again, this is going to be talking about your work environment. Now, most classifications are going to fall within the first 2 categories. We use this JAT, not just for K-12 school districts, but for public safety. We use it for other organizations as well, like I had mentioned earlier. So you'll see some of these don't really apply to a school district. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, though, most classifications are going to fall within number 1 and 2, or the first and second statements. The complexity. So think of this, this is asking about the complexity of your position. You know, think of this as being on a scale of 1 to 8, with 1 being the least complex and 8 being extremely complex. Do all of these, like I said, is this a perfect explanation, a perfect statement? No, but whichever one is the closest match. So once again, if part of it applies, or the like maybe 2 of the 3 things apply, you would select that. If only 1 thing applies, that may not be the most accurate one, but I think it's easier to think of as on a scale of 1 to 8, of where your position would fall as far as the complexity of the position. Decision making. Okay, this is the 4th job factor. So this is asking about your decision making authority. Just to give you a little bit of insight about this one, if your decision must be approved by a supervisor or higher, you would probably fall within the first 2 statements. Maybe you give suggestions, but that suggestion isn't the end all be all. So that would be in the the first 2 sections. Now, of course, if whatever decision you make that is exactly what's going to happen, no one has to approve that decision, then you can obviously go a little bit higher than the first or second statement there. Once again, you still have that comment box below. Feel free to provide us as much information in that as you would like. The last section is relationships. Think of this as the level of collaboration with others. So, excuse me. So this is, you have the options of I work primarily alone, I work with less than 10 coworkers who are mostly engaged in the same activity, so on and so forth. It gets into some supervisory responsibilities, some oversight and management, things like that. So once again, you can also think of this as, if you're a supervisor, you would probably select something around, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 or above. If you don't supervise anyone, you're going to be within these first 3 categories. All right, so now section 4, these last 2 sections are pretty simple here. It's a check all that apply. Section 4 is equipment and machinery. So once again, you're just reading through all of these, checking the box if it applies. You got everything from a copying machine to a telephone to a computer, all the way down to there's a lot more on here, but heavy equipment, things like that. And then the last section is physical abilities. Once again, you're indicating anything that has to do with the physical requirements of the position. Whenever you get down here to the required physical abilities, you'll see those green question marks next to what each title. If you're unsure what is meant by one of them, just click on that green question mark and the definition will appear. Now, saving and submitting your work is very simple. After each section, there's that save button. All you got to do is click that save button. Do that often, even if you're not finished. The system will time out after about 45 minutes of inactivity, so make sure you're clicking save. And if we go back here, you can see there's a save. I don't know if it showed up on any of these other screens, but yeah, there's a save button. So it's going to be at the bottom of each section. So just make sure that you're clicking that pretty often. There is no submit button. So whatever work you have saved is what we will review once we close out that employee window. All right. And then, of course, if you have any questions, my team's address is jat2@consultevergreen.com. You can shoot us any questions and we'll be happy to help you there. Now, let's talk about supervisor review. Once again, I want to reiterate that the job assessment tool is not a performance review. we are literally just, you're telling us what your position does, the purpose of your position. And then once we have collected all of your responses, then we're just asking supervisors to review it to make sure that nothing was left out. We want to make sure that we have the most accurate information. So just make sure that nothing was left out. Supervisor review, whoever the project team at the district gave us as being the person supervisor, that is who we are sending it to. So it's based on that data that was provided to us. So if you get someone on your list that you don't necessarily supervise, shoot an email over to HR and they can help us correct that. Supervisors cannot change an employee's answers. Okay, and I'm gonna show you what that looks like, but you can only review it. You can't change it. So you can agree or disagree with the submission, and then you can provide additional comments. So whenever we get to that screen, I'll show you what I'm talking about there. Important here, supervisors, you cannot access these reviews until after that employee window has closed. So if you click on supervisor review, it's not going to work until I open up supervisor review. So whenever we do open up supervisor review, that is when we click on the supervisor review button, not before then. If you click on supervisor review before I open it, it's going to throw an error message. You have to wait until that window has opened. Now, once I have opened supervisor review for employees, if you try to click on employee JAT to change something, it's then going to throw you an error message because I've closed it out. So this is what the supervisor review page looks like. You can see it's going to give you little tiles of what employees you're reviewing. If you hover over the very bottom portion of that tile, a view details link will appear. And that is how you are going to click on that employee submission. So once you click on it, it's going to look something like this. This is the very first section, that job related information. You can read what the employee said. Once again, we're asking supervisors to make sure nothing was left out. And then you agree or disagree. And then you can make some comments. But we're not asking, once again, this is not a performance review. This is just strictly, does that accurately describe what they do? Does the education and experience, would you say that fits for a new hire? The certifications, would you say, oh yeah, that's some good ideas? So agree or disagree. You can't change anything they say though. All right. The next section that you're also, as a supervisor, going to have access to is what we call the management issues tool. And in order to access that, you're just going to back out and go back out to that supervisor review home screen and click on the go to management issues tool. So the management issues tool is a really great feature of this system in that as a supervisor, if you do have specific concerns regarding the compensation or classification of employees, of specific employees, or even just in general of a position, you can document it here. Once again, I need documentation in order to make recommendations. So you would just put the job title you want us to go back in and really pay very close attention to in our review. If you're referencing a specific employee, you can put their name there. And then just telling us if this is a classification / job title issue, yes or no, check whichever ones apply. And then the next section is going to ask if it's a compensation or pay grade issue. Once again, check all that apply, give us some comments. And I believe it gives you a room for, I want to say 10 submissions. But of course, if you have more, feel free to just shoot those to us in an email. So at this time, we are going to take some questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to use that chat features on Zoom, or if you would like to raise your hand or speak up, feel free to do that as well. Any questions? Well, I'm going to stick around here for a few minutes, so if anyone does have any questions, feel free to stay on with me, but I'm going to stop the recording now.